in that his aerodynamics are affected by being behind, by the turbulence of the car in front. That's Jones's car. And Brands Hatch is a particularly difficult circuit to pass on. There isn't enough straight, it's too busy. And Piquet, believe me, but if he's able to keep that close behind Jones, if he can get past him, he'll go away from him quite quickly. Jones is undoubtedly in trouble. It looks like understeer to me, and I would suspect his teammates in the same sort of trouble, because Reutemann is also falling away, and at the moment not confirming his practice form, as Jones is also not managing to do. You can see, if you watch carefully
and as
now,
Alan Jones goes into clearways, there is Frank Williams himself, the man who has been responsible for building up this superb Saudia Leyland Williams team, which Alan Jones and Carlos Reutemann drive for, and whose drivers have won 4 races this year, and that is Jean-Pierre Jabouille, undoubtedly the most unlucky man in Grand Prix racing. He is out at exactly the same point where Mario Andretti went out in 1978, and Jean-Pierre Jabouille, who has yet to finish a Grand Prix in 1980, is out of the race again. As the leader goes past, Pironi goes past, there's Lafitte, and these superb handling Ligier cars are extending the gap between themselves and the battle for 3rd position between Alan Jones, number 27, leading there, and Nelson Piquet behind him in 5th position.
One of the problems of modern Grand Prix racing, Murray, is that we simply cannot get room to overtake, and this, you see, is the classic case right now. Nelson Piquet, I'm sure, is faster on the racetrack than the car of Alan Jones, but he simply cannot find a place to overtake. The ground effect has amounted to almost obliterating the long braking distances on the approach to corners that I think James and I both experienced, and these cars are gripping the road so well that you can go deep into a corner, therefore leaving very little opportunity to overtake a car. Now look, there you see him attempting to do that right there, and that's a corner, the slowest corner on the racetrack, being Druids in 2nd gear. They now go down to a very fast part of the racetrack, and it's really difficult to get past. Really, you're talking maybe only about one place on the racetrack, and if the driver is paying attention in his mirror, he'll block you from doing that.
So, in the lead, Didier Pironi, an astonishingly cool driver. James, at this Brands Hatch circuit, where are the passing places?
well, that does depend to a certain extent on the relative performance of your own car and the guy that you're trying to pass. But the most obvious place, the place where I always liked to pass if I could, was at Druids Corner, going to Druids. And but quite frankly, to overtake here is a really major operation. I remember 76 when I was trying to pass Lauda. It took me half the race to do it, and I was being well held up for a lot of that time. And it's a question of planning. You have to plan a whole lap. I spent several laps practicing my plan from a little bit of a distance, and at this point in the track, now I would want to be really close behind Jones, much closer than Piquet is now, and get out of this corner, paddock bend really quick, and do him up the hill. That's the only, for me, that's the only easy passing place at Brands Hatch. And to do that, you've got to fool the guy into leaving you a gap. You've got to move around in his mirrors as well.
Well, Piquet doesn't seem to be able to do anything about it at the moment, and Didier Pironi, the race leader, who put up the fastest lap in practice at a time of 1 minute 11 seconds, compared with Nelson Piquet's lap record, that's Jacques Lafitte in second position, compared with Nelson Piquet's lap record last year, 1 minute 17.5. Now, so Pironi in the lead here has just gone round unofficially in 1 minute 14.6 seconds, a speed of 126.1 miles an hour, and that is most certainly a new lap record, some 3 seconds faster than last year's lap record put up by Piquet. So that will give you some indication of how very, very quickly the cars, the ground effects cars with their skirts, are going this year. Now, Pironi is 2.5 seconds ahead of Lafitte. He is 8 seconds ahead of Alan Jones, and you know the gap between Alan Jones, who is in third position, and Nelson Piquet. And Didier Pironi, 1 minute 14.529. How is that for exactitude? And that's a speed of 126.246 miles an hour. The unofficial timing was about right, and Pironi is driving absolutely superbly, controlling the race from the front. Jacques Laffite, his teammate, between him and the battle for third position. So Jacques Laffite, there he goes, round the right-hander at Westfield, down towards Dingledell and Dingledell corner, which is going into Dingledell now. There's Dingledell corner, then the little short straight before Stirling's. And do you imagine, Jackie Stewart, that there are any team orders between Didier Pironi and Jacques Laffite?
I think at this stage there are no team orders at all. Didier is just trying to build up as much of a lead as he can over his own teammate. If they were to have a cushion of say 10 or 15 seconds before the next car, they could then be considered to be allowing one driver to pass the other, but I don't think you'll see that. The reason is that right now Pironi is in such a strong position in the World Championship, no one would threaten that. And look at this, here you have a situation where there's still the World Championship at risk for that man, Alan Jones, because after all, remember, he is leading the World Championship. Nelson Piquet, a threat to his World Championship and a threat on the racetrack right now. Piquet, considerably younger, less experienced, perhaps a little less cool, but tremendously mature for his age. A driver that I reckon very, very heavily for the future. So that's the situation with them. Alan Jones, very experienced. Nelson Piquet, a man who's been able to follow Emerson Fittipaldi and the late Carlos Paci from Brazil to enjoy an immense amount of publicity and enthusiasm from that crowd.
And as so very often this year, this 1980 British Grand Prix is turning out to be a very reliable race. We've only had one car go into the pits, and that was Eddie Cheever, and the first 6 places are still intact. Only Jean-Pierre Jabouille, the unfortunate Renault team leader, is out of the race, and he really does seem to have a jinx on him this year because he's yet to finish a race. Lap 13 then, out of 76, long way to go. Pironi holding a very secure lead and a big cushion between himself and his teammate Jacques Laffite. Then, in modern racing terms, quite a long gap between the battle for third and the second place man Jacques Laffite, and that is the battle for third. World Championship leader Alan Jones, who has already this year won in the Argentine. He won the last 2 Grand Prix in Spain and France, albeit an unofficial win in Spain, and so Jones fighting for World Championship positions.
It's interesting to look at the different techniques of driving around this racetrack. Nelson Piquet is taking a different line on many occasions, and he's having a threat to overtake here. He was very close, he was getting himself into a very close position. Let's have a look at the cars going around the racetrack and see if you can notice the difference. Look out for Paddock Bend, it's about 2 corners away. When they come towards that corner, you will see Piquet goes considerably wider. Now let's look at that now. We're going to have these cars coming towards you, and when they come towards you, Jones's white car turns in earlier. Now you see how it's much earlier into the racetrack, and Piquet stays way outside. So even though people say there's only one line around a racetrack, 2 different cars handle in a different way. So therefore it's considerably different for a driver to try and make his car do what he can best make it do.
Yes, I think, Jack, the only thing is that if that's an understeer problem that Jones is taking, causing him to get in a little bit early, because he can't take that sharp turn in, of course, that Piquet can get if his front tyres are gripping properly. I notice though that Piquet is not pressing Jones quite